For our final segment of the day, I am so pleased to introduce Diego Perez, widely known by his pen name, Yung Pueblo. He is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, meditator, and poet who's become a beacon of wisdom and inspiration for millions seeking authentic living and emotional well-being. His writing focuses on the power of self-healing, creating healthy relationships, and the wisdom that comes when we truly work on knowing ourselves. Yung Pueblo's most recent work, The Way Forward, released last October, continues to build on core themes of connection, healing, and self-awareness. With over 1 million books sold worldwide, Diego's work is a testament to the universal need for introspection and genuine connection in our modern world. Despite the challenges of loneliness and social isolation, we believe the potential for building a vibrant culture of connection has never been more promising. We hope this conversation will provide insights and inspiration on how individual healing and authentic living can contribute to a connected society. So Diego, thank you for being here. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you all so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So thank you so much for being here as we strive to bring more attention and awareness to issues around loneliness and social isolation across the globe. And I'm happy also to get to know you better through this conversation, and hopefully our audience will as well. A key piece of that, of building meaningful interpersonal connection, is listening and learning about another person and with other people, and understanding who they are and how they came to be who they are today. And there are, wonderful programs and interventions for loneliness that are really focused on this practice of storytelling. And so I thought we could maybe practice this in a mini way to start. Would love to learn more about what led you to become Yung Pueblo, and how did your life experiences shape your path?
Oh, definitely. Thank you for asking. So I was originally born in Ecuador, in Guayaquil, Ecuador, in South America, and my mother and father realized that we needed more economic opportunity, so they decided to move my brother and I. The four of us came to the United States, and initially we had moved to New York City, and we were there for about 2 weeks, and my mom was like, we got to get out of there. We got to find someplace else. So fortunately, my aunt and uncle were living in Boston, and they gave us a room there in Boston, and we started our new lives. A lot of this was happening when I was very young. I was literally 4 years old, and I think a lot of the trauma that I ended up receiving as a young person entered rather quietly into my mind. I think probably the most traumatizing experience above all was poverty itself. I think that's something that's not quite talked about, like the feeling of not having enough, and seeing, like, I would literally, I have so many memories of my parents sharing their stress with each other because they didn't know, how they were going to pay the rent that month. They didn't know, how are they going to keep filling the fridge over and over again. And on top of that, they didn't know the language. So like learning English. My mother was working, cleaning houses. My father was working at in a grocery store, and they were incredibly hard workers, but we were stuck in a very classic American poverty trap. So for years, until my brother and I became older and we started working, did the economics of the family start changing. And seeing my parents fight with each other, and seeing that constant struggle of not having enough, created a sense of sadness and anxiety inside of me that just stayed with me and continued growing. And when I went to university, I ended up going to Wesleyan University in Connecticut. And when I got there, it all just kind of blew up inside of me, where I was doing my utmost to run away from my emotions. Like I couldn't, whenever I felt any type of tumultuousness inside of myself, I had to mediate that with drugs, with alcohol, and to just silence these sensations in my body. And what ended up happening was just developing these really bad habits that led me to pushing my body to the absolute brink, where I almost lost my life the year after I graduated from college, after a night of binging and, doing all these different drugs. And my heart felt like it was absolutely going to explode. And luckily, I didn't die that night. It's still here. And but that night, it hit me that part of the reason that I was on the ground struggling for my life was because I did not want to accept that I didn't feel good. Like just the idea of I don't feel good horrified me. And from there was a slow walk to this radical acceptance, me accepting truth within myself, me starting to befriend my emotions. And from there, it was a year of positive habit building, telling myself the truth, and just trying to challenge myself literally to these moments where anxiety would arise, sadness would arise. And instead of running away and trying to, roll up another joint or find another party to go to, I would challenge myself to just sit on the bed. And this is before I even learned how to meditate. I would challenge myself to just sit on the bed and just feel this thing that you're running away from. And what I ended up finding was a lot of power. It was just like these emotions are there, but they're not quite as scary as I thought. And from there, about a year later, I ended up meditating. And from going to these longer 10-day silent meditation courses, I ended up realizing that like real healing is possible. And it was really transforming my mind. And this moment of that deep realization that my problem is that I'm running away from myself, and then challenging myself to be with myself ended up totally changing every relationship in my life. My relationship with my wife got deeper. My relationship with my friends and my brother and my mom and dad and my sister, like I started realizing these relationships were quite shallow. There wasn't that depth, and part of that was because I did not have the capacity for it because I couldn't even handle my own emotions. So once I started cultivating myself intentionally with positive habits and then deepen that through meditation, it was almost like a renaissance was activated. And I'm really grateful. I'm not a perfect person. I still have a lot of things I have to work on, but it's almost like a whole different chapter has opened up. And I'm really quite grateful for that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I know even in our lunch conversations, that feeling on intentional conversation, intentional building of those connections is so critical in this work. And your writing encourages reflection in ways that invite us to confront ourselves and our relationships. And more than that, your prescription for healing resonates with so many because it offers pathways forward. And so I'm curious your thoughts in these turbulent times. How can hurt communities more effectively mend? And as individuals, how can getting to know and love yourself help you maybe overcome feelings of loneliness?
I think one of the most important things we need to learn collectively, I mean, as communities and as individuals, is that when we ourselves are hurt and someone hurts us, we need to do our best to literally transform our idea of justice. Because I think a lot of times we think of justice as revenge. We don't admit that, but we do. That's how we act. And I think it's damaging. Then you're just passing the ball of hurt forward. You're pushing it generationally forward constantly. Because what human beings do, we exist in a giant web. It's a giant web of humanity. And we intentionally or unintentionally will pass the harm that we have received and we'll pass it on to another human being. And I think what's different in these times today that is quite special is not only are we having, conferences like these, but we live in historically unprecedented times. Even though everything is so tumultuous, you can look back in history. Never before have there been these many tools available for people to dramatically transform their minds and to undo the hurt and trauma that has been bound up in their subconscious. So there's so many different varieties of therapy, so many different varieties of mindfulness, meditation, all these modalities that can help you deeply transform your mind so that your mind doesn't quite feel as heavy as before. And to me, I think that's a critical part in transforming our idea of what justice looks like so that we can stop passing along that ball of hurt and instead, have justice transform into collective healing. And for individuals, I think it's hard because generationally, I mean, we're all just struggling with so much, right? Like a lot of our parents did their best. Like to me, like when I started healing myself, it was a shock. Like I couldn't believe that my mind actually felt better because I'm 36 years old, but I grew up in a way where if you had some type of mental difficulty or physical difficulty, you were just going to have to live with it for the rest of your life. So when I started meditating and I was like, wait, I still feel anxiety, but it's not as strong as before. I still feel sadness, but it's not as intense as it used to be. I had to double check with myself to see, is this even real? Like, am I lying to myself? Because the last thing I was like, I'm done with lying. Like, I don't want to lie to myself anymore because I see how dangerous that path is. But what I say to individuals is have the courage, because even if you yourself have not experienced serious trauma or not, you have definitely experienced hurt. There have definitely been moments in your life where you have felt an intense emotion. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that I'm grateful to the Eastern world for, these modalities like the Vipassana meditation that I partake in. It's so helpful to understand that these strong reactions that you have in your mind, they leave an imprint in the subconscious and they predispose you to sort of perceiving the world in a particular way and having that same reaction over and over again in a way where you're almost taking the past and repeating it over and over again until you break that process with intention. So, my encouragement to people is find your modality. Like, I meditate, it works great for me. It may not work great for you, doesn't matter. If there's therapy, there's journaling, there's so many different modalities out there. You can find something that meets you where you're at, that is still challenging but not overwhelming, something that clicks with your intuition, and something that can help you see real, tangible steps forward. And that's all we can ask from individuals is like, you're born into this life, take a few steps forward. Be slightly like more actualized, more a version of yourself that you feel good about, and that will multiply forward and just change the world dramatically.
I love that. Thank you. And there's so many tidbits and poems within The Way Forward that I would love to share with everybody. But, there's one in particular, and I'll get to another one a little later, but that stood out to me. And you write 9 things that hold great power: rest, kindness, meditation, vulnerability, healing yourself, being honest with others, embracing lifelong growth, fostering deep connections, and giving without wanting in return. And so, reflecting on this and your various writings about authenticity and modeling positive behaviors, I'm curious your thoughts on how can leaders in various sectors, whether it be politics, business, community organizations, model fostering deep connections effectively to inspire others?
I think there's a few things. I mean, one of the biggest things is we have to realize that civilization as a whole can be much more compassionate. And this is on every level of society. We're talking in terms of accessibility. Like, do people have the tools that they need to cultivate and heal themselves so that they can be less harmful to themselves and less harmful to other people around them? So, when I think of that aspect of personal growth and healing, like to me, what I'm hoping is that this becomes a human right. Like, if you need a therapist, you should, like, society should be helping you find one. And that should be like a sort of universally available thing. So I think in terms of like, we get easily stuck in the sort of microcosm of the way things work right now, but we need to challenge ourselves to break out of that and ask ourselves, how can I be more compassionate with myself? How can I be more compassionate with others? And how can that show up in the designs of the things, the products, the policies, whatever it is that I'm creating? And I think being adventurous in that manner will really help. And I'm fortunate to be friends with David Seamus. He was a former advisor of the Obama Foundation, so a former CEO of the Obama Foundation. And one thing that I learned from him that was really important was that depending on how you structure something, it will affect the way individuals behave inside of it. And I think this is a really critical thing. So we should not only design our structures so that individuals can step forward, are encouraged to step forward in a compassionate manner, but we also have to realize the internal dynamic of that individuals should have the support to be able to help alleviate the heaviness in their minds so that they can also, so that they're coming forward in the best way possible because the structures encourage them to, and also because internally they no longer have that mental heaviness. And I love this quote from Jiddu Krishnamurti. He says, "The inner creates the outer, but the outer molds the inner." So we have to think about it in these two manners.
Thank you so much. And I know in the panel discussions, one of the panel groups was talking about building a culture of connection, and
Yeah.
another one of the groups was, thinking about the structures and places and how we can build connection through place. And so thank you for bringing some of those comments back up to the forefront. And I think as we think about disconnection globally, there's often discourse around the role of social media. And we know that social media can be extreme at times and has shown to lead to poor health outcomes, in vulnerable populations such as teen girls. And most likely, technology and social media are not going to disappear. And we know that there are some advantages and promises to its use. So I'm curious your thoughts on how you use social media and technology to foster connection and community. Do you have any personal habits or tips for our audience and myself on how to keep social media a positive influence in your life?
I feel like I have the most beautiful love-hate relationship with social media. Like honestly, social media is it's essentially allowing humanity to have a conversation with itself, which I think can be quite good. But on the other end of that, like I can literally feel that the more that I scroll, the harder it is for me to be content. Not even like happy, but just content. And there are moments where like I'll allow myself to scroll on TikTok longer to feel how detrimental it is to my mind. And then my wife is like, you got to put that away. Like you're like, you got to cut it off. And then I do. And then I'll take, I just spent the last month in meditation retreats and I've been totally off from it. And boy, is it so much easier to be content. And that's on my personal level. And the other level, like I have literally seen what it has done to my nieces. It has made my two nieces, one of them is 18, the other one's 16, but especially when they were 14 and 12, it was bad. It was bad. Like they both went through different mental health crises and had these immense challenges that they had to overcome. And part of that was, I think, made a lot worse by social media. And it was kind of a little quite, it was quite scary. It was a giant challenge for our family. But what gives me a lot of hope. So I co-founded a venture capital company called Wisdom Ventures. And Wisdom Ventures, we invest in companies that have a theme of compassionate innovation. So we just made an investment in the Light Phone. And we were talking to the founder of the Light Phone the other day, and he was telling us about these pilot programs that they've been having with high schoolers. So different high schools, the principal will call, they're like, we need to get these kids off the phone. It's messing everything up. So in this one school, they were telling us they gave all of the kids light phones. And light phones, I don't know if you know of them, they're super simple. They're like, you can text, you can call, and it's like, that's about it. Just like the simple functionality. I think you can upload like podcasts to it max. What was awesome was like they made all of the school, like the faculty and the students, they all were only allowed to use light phones in the school and had to like leave their other, higher tech phones elsewhere. And he said within like 2 weeks, the school became such like a much more vibrant environment where people are connecting with each other. They were having fun, they were playing, they were studying better. Like it was like this quick change. And I think we have to use social media, but we have to be super careful with it. I know I try to be careful with it. A lot of I reach my audience through newsletters and social media, and I'm really intentional about putting forward the message that I want to send out. I also try to put it forward in a minimalistic manner so it doesn't overwhelm the mind. And and then I do my best to get off, because I play with it just like everybody else, but it's not good. So like taking months off, like I'm fortunate that I get to do longer meditation courses. I did a longer meditation course at the beginning of January to February. I was away for 45 days meditating, and like at the end of it, I hadn't used a phone, I hadn't seen a phone for 45 days. And when I turned my phone off and it was like turned it back on, and it was like the blast of emails and all this stuff, and like everyone's trying to get a hold of you. It was like, wow, it's meant to inform you, but it does it too well. It's just inducing anxiety. So we have to be really, really careful.
Thank you. Maybe I'll go on a 45-day. You inspired me. Well, Another excerpt I love from the book is, I feel like I know you, but this is our first time meeting. My intuition tells me that this is a new chapter in our very old story. Your eyes look familiar, and naturally, I feel comfortable in your presence. I don't remember my past lives, but if I have lived previously, you were certainly there. If this is a new opportunity for us, let's make sure to do it all better than before. So, if this is our new opportunity for us, and if our audience has a shared aspiration for building a culture of connection, what advice would you offer us? And what steps do you think are crucial for achieving this vision?
It doesn't take that many people to change the world. Like more than enough, right? Like even all of us here, right? It's more than enough. Like if it just takes like strong uh cohesion, planning, values, and if we're well organized, then we can connect our energy in a manner where we can undo this isolation, this atomization, this way where we have become so focused on productivity that we forget the human quality of life. We have to support growth. We have to support kindness. We have to support compassion. The ability for me to not only honor my emotions, but also have the compassion to be able to see perspectives outside of my own. And I think that's why we're here. We're here not only to grow as individuals, but to dream big. I mean, just the other day, I had the honor of giving the graduation speech at the high school that I graduated from, Boston Latin Academy. And one of the main things I told the students was, whatever your dreams are, make them bigger. Just I think it's a great thing to aim high and just do your best and make sure that you are setting yourself up in a trajectory where your goal is to be of service, whether that's the company that you're creating, the product that you're making, the policies that you're putting forward. It will benefit your mind to help others. And I think we forget that. So I just say keep dreaming big, act big, and you don't need like tons and tons of people to be fully perfectly on your side. You just need a strong core of individuals who have the mission and are actively healing themselves while they're putting their mission forward. Because I think that's the nuance of this historical moment that we're in. Is this is one of the first times that you have, people are constantly trying to change the world for the better all throughout history. But this is the first time we can really transform ourselves internally in our minds so that we don't recreate the ills of the past once we gain power.
Well, thank you so much, truly, Diego. And if you wouldn't mind, would love to, instead of reading your readings to you and to everyone, would love to hear a reading from you to help close us out.
I'm happy to. That'd be wonderful. This was on page 15 of The Way Forward. Love is much bigger than relationships. Love is the way you heal yourself, the kindness you give others, the gentleness you give yourself in turbulent times, the space you hold for close friends, the intention with which you live in the present, and the energy that changes the world. Love is every moment that elevates the human experience and all the small things that make life shine. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much again, Diego, for being with us and sharing your insights and inspiring us all to embrace both individual healing and also collective connection. And as we leave the summit, I hope we'll take these lessons forward and continue to commit to fostering deep connections in our communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you.